I asked you guys for some unpopular opinions based on the club you support, and you've not disappointed. In today's video, we're going to be going through some of the best ones. Any other unpopular opinions that you've got, drop them in the comments down below. And without any further ado, let's just jump in. HGPS says Errol Bulut is one of the best managers in the Championship. Taking a relegation-threatened club to mid-table security is an achievement that more people should appreciate. It's an interesting point. I definitely think that Errol Bulut's achievements at Cardiff last season were a little bit overlooked, maybe because of style of play. Cardiff weren't always the easiest to watch on the eye, were they? A couple of the big games that Cardiff were involved in that were on Sky, and they maybe didn't show up to those matches, and there were a few periods of the season when they went on a really bad run of form. But in saying that as well, there were also points of the season where Cardiff did play some nice stuff. And taking a team that had finished 21st in the previous season to 12th in the Championship definitely is an achievement that shouldn't be overlooked. I think a lot of the hype last season, and rightly so, went on the likes of, Kieran McKenna, the parachute teams who are all very strong. We've spoken about them sort of managers endlessly throughout the season. But someone like Bulut, who did guide Cardiff to mid-table, working with the transfer embargo, let's not forget, back in the summer as well. Long term and going forward, I think it is good news for Cardiff that he has finally penned that new contract with the club and that deal was finally made. So yeah, definitely take the point with that first one. Zach Wynn says Sheffield Wednesday dark horse next season, Danny Roll masterclass incoming. And do you know what? I can't argue with this one. It's too early to form a proper opinion of any Championship club right now because we don't know what the transfer activity is going to look like at each Championship club. But I mean, there's no doubt in it. Wednesday do have one of the best managers in the Championship. The job Roll did last season, it's been well documented, but it was absolutely miraculous. One of the best survival stories, I'd say, in Championship history. Very tactically aware manager. The squad has gaps in it, but there are some very talented players to work with. In a league like the Championship as well, if Sheffield Wednesday, let's say, get off to a flyer next season, there's every chance that they could be in and around the playoff hunt. Super Hoops is feeling optimistic about QPR. He says QPR will be in the Premier League in 3 years. Now, on the back of that comment, it got me thinking about something. On the back of Birmingham being relegated to League One, QPR, Bristol City and Preston North End are now the 3 longest serving clubs in the Championship. And it got me thinking, which of those 3 clubs will be the next to be promoted? Obviously, in the case of Preston and Bristol City, 2 very middling Championship clubs who, I mean, for the vast majority of our time in the Championship over this last sort of 7-8 years or whatever it's been, generally speaking, we've often been middle of the pack. QPR in that time have been a little bit more topsy-turvy, flown close to the wire in terms of relegation, but on the back of how they ended last season, I think there is real reasons for optimism at Loftus Road going forward. I'll leave that one for the comments though. Out of QPR, Bristol City and Preston, who do you think is the next club to be promoted out of those 3 sides, however long it might take? Dan Payne, who's a Derby fan, says Derby will not be threatened by relegation at all. That's quite a bold statement to make there. I like it for the purposes of this video. I'm not going to lie, when it comes to making my Championship predictions at the very start of the season, the 3 clubs that I always struggle with the most in terms of where to place in the 24 are always the 3 newly promoted clubs from League One. It's really hard to gauge, I feel, the level they're at compared to other Championship clubs a lot of the time. Obviously, Ipswich caught a lot of people off guard last season with doing the back-to-back promotions. But then you also had Sheffield Wednesday and Plymouth, who both survived last season, both of which you'd say involved in the relegation scrap at different points of the season. But, it is plausible that the 3 clubs coming up from League One again could all very well survive in the Championship next season. Cheesy Potato, who's a Norwich fan, says with Thorpe at the wheel we can compete for top 2 because of his ability to make a relatively small budget work and work with young players. And Norwich are a side that intrigue me going into next season for sure. Even while they were picking up results last season under Wagner, there was always the feeling that long term he was never going to be the right guy for Norwich because of whether that's in-game decisions, overall style of play, never really taken to that fan base. But with a new identity coming in at Norwich, both in terms of the management staff and the running behind the scenes and things like that, I do think there's room for optimism at Carrow Road for sure. And even looking at that group of players, it's a solid Championship squad that has a few superstars sprinkled in there. Now, how many of those big players they keep hold of this summer, I think that will be quite telling in where they finish next season and how they then go ahead and reinvest that money if they do sell a Josh Sargent or a Gabriel Sara or a Johnny Roche, someone of that quality. My gut feeling does say the top end of the Championship next season won't be as strong as it was last season, and that does give room for someone like a Norwich to maybe sneak into that top 2 conversation for sure. Owen says that Daryl DK will have his first full fit season and will bag 15 plus goals. Do you know what? Just for his sake, I hope that comes true. He's had some stinking luck with injuries since making that move to West Brom, hasn't he? Baggies fans still really yet to see the best of him. I think the best version of DK that we've seen in the Championship up until this point was when he had that loan stint with Barnsley previously. There is so much potential there, and a player of his profile can always wreak absolute havoc in the Championship. Someone of his size who can get about Championship defenders. A fully fit Daryl DK over 46 games is more than capable of hitting 20 goals in my opinion. Whether that happens or not though, I'm not so sure. The reason I love the Championship so much is because of how diverse some of the opinions can be. LJ says Corberan is the best manager in the league. For me, I definitely think he's a shout as one of the best in there. But then on the opposite end of the coin, you've got Michael who says West Brom hopefully sack Carlos. You just can't win with some Championship fans. Everyone's got their personal preference though. I just love how polar opposite different fans can be, even when you do support the same club. Speaking of bipolar Championship fans, that maybe applies to Sunderland right now. You've got some fans who are thinking Sunderland are going to be mixing it with the clubs at the top end of the Championship, and on the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got some thinking that they could be struggling and in around the relegation battle. Mark, for example, says us Sunderland have one of the worst squads in the league, with just a few standout players like Clark, Ballard and Neil, which saved us from relegation last season. I have mentioned this statistic on the channel previously, but from January onwards, only Rotherham picked up fewer points last season than Sunderland did. I mean, they completely fell apart, didn't they, in the second half of the campaign. Beale wasn't a great fit for the club, and then they've just been biding their time since sacking him in February, really, haven't they? I think for Sunderland's sake, reinvesting money will be a big theme of this summer transfer window. I reckon they're going to get some big offers for Jack Clark. We've already seen a lot of Premier League clubs sniffing around Joe Bellingham as well. I like the recruitment model at Sunderland on the whole of investing into these young players, selling them on for a profit and trying to build up the squad gradually. But it does feel like Sunderland in particular could really do with, alongside these younger players, just dumping a decent chunk of change on a proven Championship player, particularly a number 9 who could potentially take them to that next level. Interesting one from John. He says Leeds might end up in League One before making the Premier League again. Next season is one of the biggest seasons, I think, in recent history for Leeds United. While I do think there will be sales this summer, I still think the club's going to be able to keep the core of that squad from last season together on the whole. They've got players coming back from loan who I think they can sell on, generate some funds that way. But once you get into your second year of parachute payments, it's when things start to tighten up a little bit, and then every season past that is when the budgets start to decrease and when you're really going to have to split up this squad to start living within your means as a Championship club. Going into next season, Leeds are still very much a big fish in a small pond, as it were, in terms of squad size, budget and things like that. But if they're not promoted next season, things could get a little bit tricky. There you have it though, guys. Those were some of your unpopular opinions based on your Championship club heading into next season. Any others, I'd be fascinated to know. Make sure to comment them down below. Other than that though, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. If you did go on to enjoy, make sure to leave a like, and I'll see you all in the next one.